Hi, everyone. My name is Yariwo, Kitiyo. I'm the co-founder of Women in GIS Kenya. I'm also the lead strategist at the initiative. And this mainly means that I really push for strategic partnerships in this space. I'm really excited to be here. This is the first time I'm actually presenting at the Esri User Conference. It's also the very first time I'm actually even attending the conference. So this is quite exciting for us. It's also a bit overwhelming, and we're definitely humbled with the fact that you're actually sharing our work in such a global platform. So we're really grateful for this opportunity, and I hope our journey actually inspires you to be the change in your community or in whatever field you're actually from.
Hi everyone, and my name is Akoth, also a co-founder of Women in GIS, and the lead advocacy and operations officer. So my role at Women in GIS is basically to make sure that our work is landing on the right people's ears. And this is to mean that when we do something, to ensure that it's actually impactful, like it's actually being used for social good. Yes, and I'm also really excited to be here. This is also my very first time to attend the Esri UC, and I actually can't believe we are here and we are doing this. It's really exciting.
Yeah. So just to give you a bit of a background, Kara and I are going to have a conversation around what really inspired the initiative. And we're going to link this with our personal stories to just give you perspective of the idea behind the initiative, what we do, and how we actually got to where we are right now. So my first interaction with GIS was actually at an Asia Education User Conference. And the first tool I actually ever used was story maps. So I'm a big fan of story maps. That was the first ever tool I interacted with to just put points within my university and talk about change detection within that same user conference. When we finished school, the conversation we had, so we actually 3 co-founders, Carol, Jerry, and myself. We actually got to work in the same space. And this means we actually got to connect with each other and understand each other's journey on a more personal level. And I remember one of the conversations what we were having was, what were the career options we actually had? Who are the women in the field we can look up to?
It was, and it has been a very exciting journey, because I remember actually like our foundation was all based on our experiences, because we all had different roles. We're trying to look for like mentorship and guidance into our careers, into our paths, and it was not very successful. And I think that was like the first thought. That was when the first thought of Women in GIS actually came to us.
Yeah, and I remember before we even thought of the initiative, we actually got invited to host an event about monetizing and making a business out of within the geospatial industry. And during that conversation, we'd actually not thought of creating a platform that amplifies the voices of women in this space. After that event, like the feedback was really good, and you could actually see the gap in the industry. After that very event is when we actually had a discussion around we should actually do this, and for the next one we should actually have women panelists. And that's when the 3 of us started talking about how about we like make this our thing and create a very warm platform, an inclusive platform that embraces, inspires, and empowers women in this space. Yeah.
That was the first Women in GIS actual event. And we hosted about five women. It was an all women panel, and we hosted about 5 women having discussions about their journeys into the different fields.
Yeah. And one of the most exciting things about that event, I think that was the very first time we actually got to meet really brilliant, phenomenal women in this space. And that was like, for us, that was like a wake-up call. Like there's actually women in this space that we can emulate, that are actually open to do a lot of hand-holding with us. And that was really inspirational for us. At the end of the day, it was our personal stories brought together to create a platform that addresses this story, but at these personal challenges. But then we also noticed these challenges are the same challenges being faced by other women. We got into partnerships or collaborations with GIS clubs across universities in Kenya. And what's quite interesting about these partnerships was that we actually all went back to the universities we were from and created really vibrant technical communities. So we actually have regular trainings with these universities, and the main aim was to basically build the confidence of women in that space, women in STEM, women who are doing things like physical planning, geomatics. That was the main aim. And now what you are doing is linking them to the corporate world. So exposing them to tools that they were not necessarily exposed to during their period in school. So we are linking that up with corporate tools we think that are really amazing, that would make them stand out of the crowd.
From there, we started asking ourselves, so we claim to be training this number of people, but how then can we actually ascertain that the skills that we are imparting on these students are actually being received, like they're actually coming out of training as trained and skilled spatial data analysts or spatial data scientists. And that was how the idea of data visualization challenges came up. So these are quarterly challenges that we run with our community, and we share data sets. And these data sets are all geared towards solving women issues.
Our data visualization challenges, like Carol mentioned, are really brought in conversations, like intimate conversations, vulnerable conversations with men in the room to actually talk about issues that directly affect women. Issues like cervical cancer and the treatment methods, and looking at the numbers across the country, how many women actually walk into a hospital for testing. And then the other quite interesting, and including even talks about gender-based violence, and just talking about how pervasive it is and how the numbers are really shocking and across the country. And I think it's really amazing how our technical space has been really about building a cohesive community that understands what inclusivity is, but at the same time have these tough discussions with both men and women in the room.
My name is Rosemary Okello Olale, the director of the Africa Media Hub at Strathmore University Business School. Women in GIS actually demonstrated almost 2 months ago in Kenya, when they developed an interactive platform whereby they could give interactive maps at wards level to identify Kenya, high risk and COVID-19 population. People started questioning that the voices of the women were already absent, that inequality was already being seen. And having women on the decision making is critical. And women in GIS have demonstrated that, because with COVID, the data was there. But analyzing it from a women's perspective, understanding the localization in which women stay has made a difference. So women in GIS is beyond science. Women in GIS is a paradigm shift to the new normal.
So Women in GIS has been part of a team that's supporting the Ministry of Health in the response, recovery, and resilience for COVID-19. And this has been a very impactful project for us, because it has actually enabled us to work with the community of people that we have, to work with the stakeholders that we have, to positively impact the Ministry of Health and also just the local management of COVID in Kenya. So part of the work that we've been doing for the Ministry of Health has been to create a dashboard. So what this dashboard does is that it shows the confirmed cases, the cumulative cases, the confirmed daily recoveries and deaths for COVID. And all this is done at county level. You can be able to query and see all the information that you're interested in seeing for COVID in the countries. We are also able to do prediction models. So this was done jointly with Jomo Kenyatta University, Eastern African, and Palladium. So what this prediction model does is that it shows, going with the epidemiological cycle of COVID, how is Kenya expected to react, or how are cases in Kenya expected to show themselves? So actually, these prediction models have been used by the Ministry of Health and also the Kenyan government to be able to advise the public on what to do and what not to do, to advise the public on when to reopen schools, to advise the public on which kind of businesses should open and at what rate. For instance, can the restaurants open within a week of each other, or can all the businesses go on as usual? Can people go back to work as usual, or do we continue staying at home? And then on top of the prediction models, we asked ourselves, so let's look at this data geographically, and let's identify the areas that are at high risk, the areas that are at low risk, and the areas that are at medium risk. So the national map, from the national map of Kenya, you can be able to identify the areas that are high risk, low risk, and medium risk. So the scale range that we used here was a scale of between green and red, red being high risk areas, green being low risk areas. Using the same dashboard, we're also able to explore how Kenya is performing compared to the other countries in the world, and that is what we call the global dashboard. And then there's also a page on about COVID. So in about COVID is just general information that's been presented by the World Health Organization.
So this is Karen Bett. I'm a policy officer with the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. GPSDD is a network which brings together governments, the private sector, civil society, and also other organizations dedicated to using the data revolution to actually achieve the SDGs. As one institution, it's difficult to sort of solve systems completely. So how do you communicate the value of working collaboratively and working together to build the systems? And again, it takes me to the value actually of data when we look at the work that Women in GIS are doing with the State Department for Gender. And it's really about inclusivity, which is at the heart of the matter. In my view, and again, this represents the global partnership, is data only makes the difference if it is about sustainable and inclusive systems.
One of the most exciting projects that also really close to my heart is our response to COVID, which is bringing a gender dimension to COVID and understanding how the different sectors have actually been affected, and looking at especially vulnerable communities and women most importantly. So I'm going to take you through our gender situation room. So all these components make up our gender situation room, and the call center's data is actually from the toll-free line that is used to report cases of gender-based violence. And then the data streams also come in an instance where not all cases are reported through the call center. So there's actually a GBV form that is used to report that, and that captures all these sorts of data streams. And the other thing is also using national statistics like population to just look at the rates and how it cuts across the entire population. And then the analytics component is also quite important to just understand the situational awareness across health, gender-based violence, FGM, and also unpaid care work, and the general economic impact of COVID. And then, of course, the infrastructure. The current platform works as software as a service, and the goal actually is to build it to an enterprise solution. So this is quite exciting, and at the very core of our gender situation room is location intelligence. So that's what makes it a really powerful situation room. So what you're looking at is actually the solution architecture of the gender situation room. So for the example that I'll focus on is gender-based violence, simply because that has been that has really taken off, and we're actually in the analytics stage, and we've actually been able to share some of the reports on the Gender Data Hub. So the first bit is definitely the call center. That's the key primary source of data that comes into the situation room. And then the other source of data is actually all the other information that comes in, but not necessarily through the call center. So for that, we've also automated that through Survey 123. That's the GBV reporting form, and this actually is reported at county level by the GBV technical working group. And then on then on the other side of the situation room is bringing in resolution systems. So now this means linking up to actually other sources of data, and this means we now have a comprehensive data set, a comprehensive database in terms of the data that comes in, but also being able to track these cases when you're talking about gender-based violence. So I think what's really powerful is what we get from this, the fact that we now have a holistic view of gender-based violence. And again, this now also means that we have a holistic view across all the other themes, be it health, GBV, FGM, and the economy as the whole representation of the situation room. And at the end of the day, we have now disaggregated analysis. When it comes to violence, we now are able to understand violence in terms of the age disaggregation, the gender, the type of violence, and location really plays a key component, simply because these scenarios play out so differently across the country. I think what's also important to look at would be how we are actually being able to bring in the public into this as a form of community engagement, and that's the Data Hub. So in the Data Hub, we have a couple of themes, and which focus on gender policy and research, maternal health, socioeconomic empowerment, gender-based violence, and FGM. And what's important to note is the security concerns that come with such sensitive data, especially when you're talking about gender-based violence. That's quite sensitive information. And issues like data allocation, data access, and anonymity is definitely a concern. And how we are managing this through the SaaS platform is tracking of the user behavior, understanding who accessed a certain file at a certain point in time. And then we are also using credentials for that. So that means only people with credentials can access that portal, and the fact that the data is anonymized at county level. I like how futuristic the team is actually, and we actually want in the near future to build solution templates around this.
My name is Philip Tigo. I work with Arizona State University, and more specifically the Thunderbird School of Global Management. As Arizona State University, we talk about leadership in the fourth industrial revolution, and Rosemary has mentioned this, Karen has mentioned this. So how do we wield the power of technology and capabilities that it brings to work and serve the communities that are excluded? And we know that women are often excluded. When we put together a digital collaborative for COVID-19, it then became very obvious that it is not an issue of creating new infrastructures. It's simply an issue of catalyzing ecosystems that existed. And that's why between us and Global Partnership, it wasn't difficult to sort of reach out to women in GIS. If COVID-19 has taught us or taught us anything, is that the world is increasingly becoming location-oriented. And COVID-19 has shown us that, and especially countries like Kenya, and more increasingly other countries in the region, will be adopting a differentiated lockdown approach. And when you do that, there's always a challenge around people who are always in the margin excluded. So that's women, persons with disabilities, or persons without adequate income, and issues around food. And so I think it became very interesting then to see how to engage with women in GIS in terms of just not looking at a gender aspect of it or gender violence, but looking at the entire COVID response in its entirety, moving towards how then that piece of work informs the recovery, which is really the policy angle, because then once you're involved in the response, it means you are actively curating data. And so that data then needs to inform the response. Then ultimately it needs to inform recovery and resiliency. And I think for us that becomes quite key in this three-tier approach.
Yeah, I think in conclusion, this has been an amazing journey. There's a lot of things that I've been able to do, but then again, there's also a lot of things that I would have wanted to change. And this brought about like just a statement for me. And my advice to my younger self was occupy space. Just basically that, occupy space. And this to me meant talk about the things that you do. Believe in yourself more to be able to voice your opinion. Believe in yourself more to be able to voice your projects. And I think that has been really transformational for us as women in GS, because when we started just as a platform for women. And it's phenomenal how this has grown simply because we talk and we share amongst ourselves as co-founders, amongst ourselves as a team, and also with our community.
One of the key things that actually drives our innovation and the projects that we run is that we don't play safe. We are all open to taking as much risk as possible. And I think that really speaks to the future of workforce and young people, and including young people. When it was beginning, I think, Carol, it was people were still a bit shy to talk about things like access to sanitary pads, marital rape. And now we're actually having these conversations. And it's not just women having these conversations. It's actually both men and women having these conversations. It's all of us. Yeah. And I think that is just that speaks a lot to what we aim to drive in this space. And I think we've actually achieved that. But the interesting bit is that I was actually thinking about this the other day, and it's quite interesting to note that we are just getting started. It's so futuristic. We still don't know what the future would look like, but we know that it's beyond what we are creating. It's something bigger than what we are doing in Kenya. Yeah. It's something bigger than what we'll do in East Africa. It's going to be beyond that. Yeah.